Hello and welcome to the Web Talk Show. I'm Armando Perez-Carreno, and today we're going to be talking about blocks, why I like them, why I think they're a step in the right direction in WordPress, and what they might mean for you as a user, an agency owner, or maybe even a developer. So let's start off. For any of you who might not know what a block is or have not heard about the block editor or Gutenberg or anything of that nature, and you're used to classic WordPress or classic themes, a block will make sense as soon as I explain what the block editor is. So think about publishing within WordPress, just in the context of being an editor. For example, you are publishing blog posts or something of the nature. When you're writing in a classic theme, the traditional way, what would happen is you would be met in the backend with this little box, the tiny MCE box, or a what you see is what you get editor, which isn't really what you see is what you get. It's just a little box. You write within it, you might add some formatting, some styling, but then when you view it in the front end, it's completely different because the CSS doesn't match, the styling of the page doesn't match, the width, the margins, etc. is very different from what you see in the back end and what you really see in the front end. So the block editor changes this experience. Now you put the title at the top, but then the editor experience is literally what you see is what you get. You start typing, you see the paragraphs with the right fonts, the right margins, the right paddings, and we'll get deeper into that in a little bit. But when you view it in the back end and you view it in the front end, it's exactly the same thing because it's thought of as a visual editor, if you will, that allows you to really take advantage of the tools that WordPress provides you as a user or as an editor, not only to edit, but also to view it like people are going to view it without having to go back and forth. And so there's a ton of things that go happen behind the scenes, and we'll talk about some of those as well. But it's important to keep in mind that instead of imagining what it's going to look like and having to preview, you can really see what it's looking like, what the columns, you can enter columns if you want, rows, grids, use flex, etc. You can view all that as it's going to be shown in the front end. And so that in itself is a great experience, but it is not what people are used to. And so there's this dilemma of, should I start using the block editor or should I stay with what I have? So what happened many years ago is that this exact thing where you have this editor that does not match what you see in the front end, talking about the classic editor, would make people look for alternatives within WordPress to the publishing experience. And that's where page builders came in. So you had Elementor or Divi or the Visual Composer or anything like that, Beaver Builder. Those tools allows you to, you can build a site on it, but it also allowed you to create experiences visually. It allowed you to see what it would look like. And so a lot of that is very good because through the years, they've evolved the editing experience and you didn't have to rely on that sort of old-fashioned little box that didn't really match what you saw in the front end. So come the future, the now WordPress core with its project Gutenberg, which is now just part of the block editor or full site editing, which we'll discuss later in this episode, allows you to do much of that without requiring additional plugins or additional page builders. And that's where it really shines because it's way more performant. It allows you to have more granular control of what happens in the site itself, and also it allows your editors to have a consistent and standard way of doing things, and we'll get into that as well. So I really like it coming from building Elementor sites, for example, in the past. Having this ability to have that visual experience, but within core WordPress is fantastic, at least in my opinion. Just playing around with it the first time that we built a site on the block editor, it was smooth. It was very easy to do. There are things that are still growing within it, as are in all the other tools, but some of them have had more time to mature. But the overall experience for me was a positive one. And that's why I wanted to share this in this episode. I'm going to discuss a few scenarios of why I think this makes sense for a lot of people and why you should give it a try if you haven't already. So keep in mind that this is the future. This is where WordPress is headed. This is what will be just standard. There's no like, oh, I just want to keep the old one. Well, there's a plugin for that, but now Core just ships out of the box. The new themes 2024, 2025 are block themes, which we'll discuss as well. So you have to prepare yourself for this, whether you like it or not, but I hope you like it and want to experience it, because really it has been an eye-opener for me. And the more I use it and the more I talk to people who really use it in their agencies, in their work, they really like it. So let's talk about where this fits in for the user. Imagine you're writing a post. You start typing, you have a paragraph, right? You want to add some bold, italics, yeah, you could always do that, but now you see the right margins and everything. Now, I discussed this in another episode with Mike McAllister, the importance of having design systems where you say, for this site, we're going to have these 2 fonts and we're going to have these 5 colors and we're going to have this amount of spacing and these are the font sizes that we have, and that's it. We can't go making a rainbow out of this and just having all sorts of mixed colors and fonts and margins and paddings, because then it's a mess to manage. So once you have this sort of design system, which themes give you, and you can modify, of course, you can now feel confident that you and your team and your editors, and your authors can publish content that looks aligned across your site. And if you ever have to change something like a font size for a specific type of heading, you change it once and it is reflected everywhere else. So that's very good. So within the block editor, yes, you're typing on, you're adding images, things like that. But on the side, you can select which font you want from the list of fonts that you have, or you just leave it as default. The colors, based on a list that you already have that's predetermined. The sizes, maybe you have 5 sizes and those are the only ones you use, or maybe you don't even have to allow people to change font sizes. They could just choose paragraph, heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have all those to choose from that could already be pre-styled for your brand. You don't have to think about what sizes to use because a designer already decided that that's what they should look like. And so it's a more comfortable experience for an editor and an author. Just go through and build this out without having to think what sizes to use. I know I'm doing a heading or a smaller one, less important, etc. I just go through and do that. So just from an author or editor experience point of view, I think it's great. Now, what is a block? So when we're talking about the editing experience, you have, for example, an image block, or you might have a carousel block or anything like that. So think about widgets, right? You might have had widgets in the past that you put in from plugins. You might have had shortcodes that you put in, like a calendar shortcode or a form shortcode or anything like that. With blocks, you can do that same thing, but have all the settings right there. So instead of having to go to a settings screen within an obscure plugin page, everything can be done in the actual editor. So you're editing and now I want to add a carousel. Oh, carousel block. You add it, you can add the images there, you can change padding, styling, everything right there. You don't have to go anywhere else to create something and then bring it back. So that's a very nice experience because everything is within the editor. And so again, this is for users. It's just very easy to use. Why is it better than a shortcode? Well, because shortcodes, you would have to send the parameters as code, and you type something wrong, you break it. So especially for regular users, why do they have to think of these sort of pseudocode items that have to put into the sites or their posts, where you can just have a plus sign and add something like a carousel or a slider or anything like that. And then they could just adjust settings that are exposed to them right there. So that, in my experience, is a lot better than using shortcodes. And I'll get into the developer side of shortcodes later, but this, just for users, I think is a great use case. You can get started with blocks just directly with WordPress 2024. You can build a full, really powerful website using 2024 without having to drastically change it like you had to before, because before it would be more of a blog type website. Now you can actually build pages and everything with one of the standard themes, especially now with 2025 coming soon. Now, another great theme to start with is Ollie WP by Mike McAllister. That's a great theme also. It has a lot of predefined sort of views and patterns, and we'll talk about patterns later, but it allows you to build these experiences with predefined little chunks that just make it a lot easier for someone who might not be a developer to build a website for their business or for their blog or personal project, whatever it is. So they're great. Now, as an agency, what does this mean? Why would I want to get into blocks or the block editor? Well, with full site editing, which is the ability to create templates for pages and the header and the footer and dynamic content, it really expands the power of WordPress, because again, you don't need a plugin for a page builder to do this. You can do it directly within the actual core builder. So you can create your own header. There's templates for that. You can change it completely. You can add whatever you want. It's all visual, drag and drop. You can create your own footer. You can create page templates or post templates, for example, so that when someone goes into an article in your blog, they can see how you want it to show. So you already have the title, the byline, the author, the related posts based on a certain categorization that you already have, the share feed, etc. And that is all, again, you can visually, as an agency, when you're building sites for customers, you can do all that, agency or freelancer, of course, you can do all that visually, which is very nice, because then when you're done, someone else can take over, or if you're given support, or your own client can actually take over that in the future if they wanted to. Of course, you can provide the support, you can limit these features so they don't get confused, but if you want to allow them to sort of keep the code or keep their site for themselves, which I think is good practice, even if you're providing support, maybe in the future you have a way to call it an escape hatch, right? So if for whatever reason you're no longer available, people can still go in and make adjustments to it, provided you give them the right access, right? So there's a lot that can be done in a lot of different ways, but having this ability to create these templates for post types, for custom post types, for archives, for how you show a post grid or a product grid in a catalog, if you're showing the products and you have a sidebar with the filters and all that, that can all be done within full site editing. And so the site now is essentially a page builder in its own without requiring anything else. And like I said, it's very performant. And the reason, or one of the reasons that it's very performant, is that blocks are co-located. So all the code for a block, it's PHP, it's JavaScript, it's CSS, it's HTML, everything is inside the block. If that block is not on the page, then none of that loads. So if you have special CSS that you had to load for a form or for a calendar or for a carousel, that doesn't have to be loaded on all your pages just in case that form is put on a page. It will just load on the page that actually has that block right now, or that is set to display that block right now. And then all of that is stored within the post content. So it's very easy, which is a great feature for agencies as well, to say, oh, I really like this layout that I have here and I want to move it to this other page. I could just select any section within the editor, copy it, and just paste it like that, copy paste, and it will go to any other page or post or even any other site, because essentially in the backend, the code that's there is readable. You can click, view the code, you can see the HTML markup, the JSON for the dynamic stuff. I won't get too technical here, but you can literally just grab an item or a pattern or a full section of a page on a site, copy, and then go to another website and paste it, and it'll just work. Now, of course, you'll have to have those same blocks. If you have custom blocks, we'll talk about custom blocks later, but if it's just regular blocks, core blocks, then yeah, it'll just come over just like that. Now, if you don't have some of those blocks available in the other site, no worries, it doesn't break. It just tells you that block is no longer available and you can just delete it or remove it. So compared to other solutions that I've worked with in the past, where you might bring in something that doesn't exist from one side or another, you would get an error, or it would just disappear into the ether. You don't know what happened. Here you can actually visually see what went wrong. So a little technical there, but something that I think is really nice. Now, there's also the benefit of, for a developer or an agency that has developers that does provide custom solutions or custom code for your customers, instead of creating short codes to be placed within templates or within posts or within content, you have the option of creating custom blocks. And creating custom blocks sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's practically the same as a short code from the PHP point of view, but then you can take it further by using React or JavaScript to create the same layout experience in the editor, the sort of back-end, front-end, if you will, editor of the block editor, basically. So that way, instead of providing people with short codes, or your own clients with short codes, you can create these blocks that they can use and reuse across the site and have access to the same styling on the side, which just core WordPress provides. So we talked about earlier about the core global styles, right? You have your fonts, your paddings, your margins, and you have special settings for those. And so you can now, with a custom block, allow people to insert your custom block. For example, if you're doing an LMS and it's a custom version of your LMS, right? Even if you're using LearnDash or whatever you're using, you can then create a custom block, say a playlist block that can be shown within the editor when people are wanting to add it, and they can go in and style it on the side with the same theme options that you see everywhere else across the site. So it's a great experience overall, from the user to the agency or whoever is building the site, to developers who might be creating custom blocks or custom solutions within a website, within the context of a website build, or even creating custom plugins. Which brings me to the last thing, which is plugins. I think that are gonna evolve. I think a lot of these newer plugins are gonna have an advantage over some older plugins that haven't adapted yet, because they will provide this enhanced experience for users to keep everything within the editor. And we've seen this already with a big rewrite of Search and Filter Pro. With version 3, it's fabulous because you could do everything in the editor. You just add a search field, or you add a choice selection or a control field, or whatever they're called. I don't know what they're called, but it allows you to add these fields right there and make the adjustments and link it to the query loop that you have there. And it's all within the editor. You don't have to go back and forth with just cryptic screens that other plugins might have. And so that is a good example of a company that took a very good plugin. I have sites that run that from, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, have had no changes, and the plugin still runs. No issues ever with compatibility or things like that. So they're doing a good job, but they decided to take the time to rewrite a lot of the functionality to make it work with blocks and the block editor. And I think that's fantastic, and I think that's what a lot of these plugin companies should be doing, at least in my opinion. But as I was saying, a lot of these younger companies that don't have the overhead might start building like an e-commerce solution, which I know that's the craziest thing you might want to do. But if WooCommerce slows down your site by double just by loading it, because on every page load it loads a bunch of stuff, if someone builds something similar, completely block-based out of the box, then it's going to be more performant. So even though I really like WooCommerce and the fact that they're doing the new checkout blocks, the product blocks, and they work great, by the way, checkout experience with blocks, if you haven't tried it, it's awesome compared to what we had in the past. I feel there's a lot of room for improvement with thinking about these items as co-located, individual, isolated blocks that only load their code when necessary. And of course, there's background functionality that has to run and everything, but just keeping that in mind, I think a lot of these plugins coming along now are gonna be excellent. So let me know what you think. about the blocks in the comments on YouTube. On Spotify, you cannot leave comments from what I know, but if you're listening on Spotify, we also have this on our YouTube channel, so you're welcome to leave comments there. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe here on Spotify or on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.